Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Agenda. In the past week, anti-corruption crusaders have hailed the appointment of the special prosecutor as a great leap, a giant one, of course, in the fight against corruption. The office, which was a campaign promise by the New Patriotic Party, was giving impetus with the passage and subsequent assent of the bill. It now becomes law in January 2nd, 2018. Now, the nomination of Martin Amidu as a special prosecutor has generated considerable public debate, I must say overwhelming, and a significant number of authoritative voices have also vouched for his competence and integrity. But as we count down to the vetting of the nominee, key issues still remain on the agenda, which is why we're here this afternoon. For example, does the Office of the Special Prosecutor signify a game changer in the fight against corruption? Is this actually a significant step, bearing in mind that the Attorney General is still a political appointee, is still retaining the prosecutorial powers? There are quite more of some of the issues surrounding the nomination of Martin Amidu, which we will be discussing, but we'll take a break. And when we return, we'll introduce our guest. So let me quickly, rather than take a break, introduce our guest for this afternoon, and then when we get back, we'll hear the President make the nomination. So I'll start with my immediate left, Professor Justice Bali. Good evening, and thank you very much. Good afternoon, thanks for coming. And Mr. Vice Sazim is an anti-corruption campaigner, and our own Dr. Eric Odro Sai. We're grateful to have you all here, gentlemen. This afternoon promises to be a great discussion. We'll take a break, and when we return, we'll hear from the President announcing nomination of Martin Amidu, and then we'll take the discussions from there.
I can also personally vouch for his public spiritedness. We were on opposite sides in a series of landmark constitutional cases in the period leading up to and in the early years of the Fourth Republic, well known to students of constitutional law, which helped shape the evolution of the Constitution of the Fourth Republic. As Deputy Attorney General as he then was, he conducted those cases with the fairness which should be a cardinal feature of the conduct of any self-respecting lawyer. Fully convinced that Mr. Martin Amidu, a prominent legal personality who held the high office of Attorney General of the Republic in the government of the late President Professor John Evans Atta Mills, has the requisite integrity, competence, courage, and independence of character to discharge effectively the responsibilities of this new office.
Right, so that's the President introducing Martin Amidu as the special prosecutor. So let's start our discussion. I'll start with you, Mr. Vitus Azim. I know that the fight against corruption, various governments have done what they think is enough, what they can do. Now, the MPP started its campaign on the note of making a promise that it will set up the Special Prosecutor's Office, and then subsequently a bill was passed and it has become law. Does the nomination of Martin Amidu bring what I will call a giant leap in the fight against corruption, or you think it's just one of those things?
I think, you see, there are two issues. The nomination of Honorable Martin Amidu might be a leap in the fight against corruption, but the process and the laws or the law that led to his appointment have problems. So I think we must start with that. You said they promised special prosecutor. They actually promised independent public prosecutor.
So this is not what they promised?
This is not
what we have. Is not what they.
No, it's not what we promised.
They promised,
or what they promised. You see, independent is different from special prosecutor, because the law has put the special prosecutor directly under the Attorney General. The Attorney General makes the nomination, probably in consultation with party groups and other people. only to be endorsed by the president and to be approved by a parliament that is dominated by the NPP. So when you look at it that way, the individual may be the right person, but the processes that will guide the actions of the individual may not give us what we want. That's my first impression. But having said that, the law has been passed by our parliament, our representatives, and for the next 4 years, or until the law is amended, we have no choice than to live with it. And so we now look at, okay, living by it or with it, how can we work? What can we do to make sure that it actually delivers? And that's where the appointment of the individual now comes in. And the fact that Martin Amidu was known as an NDC person, I think he's still registered as an NDC person, and that the NPP has taken him, is interpreted as a sign that the government is committed in actually getting, would you call a neutral person, maybe depending on how you look at it, a neutral person, non-partisan, that's doubtful to handle this position.
Right. Professor Bawley, I know that the last time we spoke, you said that there's never been a fight against corruption. Do you now see that perhaps the fight has begun?
Unfortunately, no. No, for a very simple reason. I should say that I am very excited, or I was very excited that the president made a nomination in the person that he nominated.
Why? Why so? I mean, because there are those who feel that he went outside of his party to get somebody who is not within, and that could also be problematic.
Well, whether within or without, all of us know that those of us, or the people of Ghana who care about corruption, know that if it is within and or without, and if the party people will feel excited about, then we shouldn't start. And so it should be in the person that everybody else will not be happy with. And people will not be happy with it, with the person, because they think that the person would do something that will not be sweet to them. And so for me, the fact that we are, or most of us are making noise that, well, we need somebody who is party person and all of that, signifies that this person may be the right person. And so I'm excited about the person, because the fight against corruption is usually also based on the integrity of the person who has to do the fight. But as the discussion went on after the president's announcement, then I started getting worried. Worried because it appears the conversation has changed to mean that the naming of Honorable Amidu as the special prosecutor means that everything would be done, or everything that has to do with corruption should be left to him to do. But if that is the case, then it means that we haven't started. And that's why I say we haven't started the fight. Because, see, why we will not, be excited about cleaning the garbage in Accra and just keep cleaning is that people will keep littering. So if you were to leave Martin Amidu and he has all the strength, all the energy, all the resources, and every other thing to do this job, and we don't clean up the upstream, it means that he would have more than enough to deal with, and he cannot deal with. So I think that the conversation should be broadened enough to the extent that we say Honorable Martin Amidu will be dealing with specific cases of corruption, but that there are several other institutions that have to deal with corruption in different ways, including institutions that will have responsibility of educating and helping to prevent corruption. Then we can say we have started the fight.
Like the NCC?
The NCC, the SHRAJ itself is there. SHRAJ has a huge mandate. The police service and all of its agencies. We recently had Serious Fraud Office, which got transformed into IOCO. There are independent investigative institutions. For example, you get civil society organizations that are doing a lot of work. We get the media that is doing a lot of work. So if we are not careful and we all get too excited by the appointment of the special prosecutor, we would all go to bed, wake up the next morning, and our farm will be weedier than it used to be.
And perhaps our institutions wouldn't be performing as
they won't
strong
be performing
as they would
because
have.
You see, what is going to happen is that there's going to be a shift in emphasis. And I hear people...
When you say shift, you mean shift from the institutions to the person?
Yes.
What should it be?
Yes, so that maybe two shifts. One, a shift of focus from this institution of the public prosecutor's office to the individual and what he can do, but he's going to be working with people. And two, a shift in the traditionally established institutions of anti-corruption to the special prosecutor. And if everything else has to drop at the door of the special prosecutor, one, there will be a lot of despondency on the part of the traditional anti-corruption institutions. And therefore, we will see a lot of no work done in those areas. And that will mean that there will be a lot of things. For example, if you were to look at agencies that are collecting taxes in this country and the kind of systems that have to be in place to ensure that we are able to prevent corruption, we're not doing a lot. There are new things that get established every now and then, and I'm sure that our colleague, Dr. Osai, will be talking about the public accounts, not public accounts, public financial regulation, right? And the rules that are established and the systems that are required to be established to ensure that people don't get a free day to feed before we start chasing them for what they have fed. So I think the fight, in my view, hasn't started. I am excited that Honorable Hamidu got nominated for this job. I have already tweeted many times that we should support him. I have tweeted that we should give him all of the energy or the resources he needs to be able to work. But I think that the fight won't start if we leave all of it to Martin Hamidu, because he cannot. If all of us decide to continue to perpetuate the acts of corruption, it will be too inundating for Martin Hamidu to work on. And so for me, I think that, yes, I'm excited, but the fight hasn't started. Maybe the other aspect of why I say the fight hasn't started is about whether or not Honorable Hamidu, and just as my big brother said, is going to, one, getting the resources that he needs, to going to be getting the kind of political support that he needs, whether or not name calling and tagging and demonstrations. You've seen in the past, somebody is arrested for some crime, and then people mass up into the courts and into the police stations to go and get the person out. Now, if these attitudes don't stop, if my brother gets arrested for committing any crime or for involving himself in anything, and my village people will come, and if chiefs will come, and if pastors will keep praying, and if you people would twist the stories to favor them and to project them as being people who have never committed any offense,
then we're not getting
then the fight won't start. So that's my view on
right. Dr. Eric Odrosai, if I may borrow Barack Obama's words, are we not placing too much emphasis on the individual, Martin Hamidu, instead of focusing on perhaps stronger institutions?
I think so. From the discussions, I mean, from the public, the discussions, we are placing emphasis on the individual rather than the institution. But when you look at the law lays more emphasis on the institutions. For the purpose of putting these discussions in context, let me go back to the NPP manifesto. Why did the NPP promise this? And I'll tell you what the NPP promised. I have the manifesto in front of me now. The NPP identified a challenge that two anti-corruption institutions, SHRAJ and the IOCO, every now and then would have to go to the Attorney General's department for advice before they prosecute certain cases. And they saw it as a gap. So then they promised on page 135 of their manifesto, they said they were going to establish by an act of parliament an office of the special prosecutor who will be independent of the executive. So this is what they promised.
It doesn't look like this special prosecutor is independent of the executive, is it?
You see, when you look at the Special Prosecutors, Office of the Special Prosecutors Act, rather than when you compare this office with the IOCO and SHRAJ, this office is more independent because they would not have to then go to the Attorney General's department every now and then for advice. The advice seemed to have already been given in advance. So when you look at Article 88.4, for instance, it is the Attorney General that gives the permission to other institutions to prosecute on its behalf because it has the prosecutorial power.
But the Attorney General still retains his or her prosecutorial
Definitely,
authority.
but under the Office of Special Prosecutors Act, this particular power has been given. So the Office of the Special Prosecutor does not have to come back to the Attorney General to prosecute certain categories of offenses. Now, back to your question, whether or not we are emphasizing on individuals and
too much
on institutions. When you look at the structure, and I like what Professor Bawale said, it is not only about Martin Hamidu, it is about the office. And everybody is forgetting about the office, and we're emphasizing on Martin Hamidu. Martin Hamidu is an individual. He's going to work with assistants. His activities will be quality assured by a board. The composition of the board is very important. We should be concerned about who and who are represented on the board. when you look at the Act is saying that Iyoko must be represented there, FIC must be represented there, the police must be represented there, Shrine will have to be represented there, civil society will have to be represented there. What kind of quality assurance are they going to give to Mr. Martin Amidu? And Mr. Martin Amidu has a security of tenure, 7 years, one off, 7 years. After 7 years, what happens? So I think that our discussions should center on the institutions rather than the individual, because he's going to work within the system. And if the system is not working well, he cannot survive. And the office is going to work based on evidence or information. Now, you can prosecute, but if you prosecute and you are not able to prosecute to secure conviction, work done is zero. And we should also try to avoid duplicity in the system. Because we have FIC there, we have Iyoko there, we have Shraj there. Question then is, assuming Iyoko is prosecuting a case and it borders on procurement irregularities, prosecution of which has been given to the Office of the Special Prosecutor, are they going to hand it over to the Special Prosecutor to prosecute? All of us have a role to play in supporting this regard. So I will agree with you that the discussion must be on what the office can do, but not the individual Martin Amidu.
Let's shift to what the office can do, Mr. Vice Azim. Among some of the objectives of the office, I'll read is 1, to recover the proceeds of corruption and corruption-related offences, investigate and prosecute cases of corruption and corruption-related offences to prevent corruption in the public sector. So it becomes discretionary if we have the office and the individual to make the decision of what should be prosecuted. Do you foresee that this is going to create a clash with the authorities that the Attorney General still has?
Yes, for me, yes. It's going to create some clash. Because from past experience, we've seen cases where, instances where a case goes to court, and at a certain stage, the Attorney General, not necessarily under this government, Attorney General decides that they're no longer interested in this case.
Internally prosecuted.
And the case gets withdrawn. Now, this special prosecutor is directly under the Attorney General. Unlike SHRAG, which is a constitution mandated body that has more independence than
But Dr. Drosa is saying that the Attorney General's authority has been given to the special prosecutor. So it won't be like he is going to take...
Only with regards
to special cases?
Yes.
How do we determine those special cases?
And how to prosecute. But even to decide what to prosecute, I think you still have to look up to the Attorney General. And that's where the problem will come in. That's where the problem will come in. Can the special prosecutor just read of an allegation of corruption in the newspapers and decide to investigate? SHRAG can do that. I'm not sure the special prosecutor can do that. If the special prosecutor starts a case and he or she is told that this case you cannot continue, what happens?
Can he continue nonetheless?
Can he go ahead and continue against the will, the directive of his boss? So those are the issues that would definitely create problems for him as special prosecutor. And secondly, he talked about the board.
Yeah.
But even apart from the board, who are going to be working directly under him? We've already had a name that is going to be a deputy, who is at the Attorney General Department, probably worked under Martin Amidu before. Was Martin Amidu consulted in determining this person and other management staff that will be made to work under him? If he already worked with them before and their relationship has not been good, he has not been satisfied with their performance, are they going to be able to work together? You can have a top person, very perfect in everything, but if you have people that are below you that can undermine you or not do the work the way you want it to be done, you end up failing. So these are some of the issues that would come up. It needs to be consulted from the beginning, give a free hand to appoint the people he's going to work with. It doesn't necessarily have to pick people from the Attorney General Department. I don't think so. It doesn't necessarily have to pick people from the police service. That he should have a free hand after setting up his office. Of course, again, setting up the office is another long process. Is he going to have the resources, the people to set up the office within the 3 months? Because the expectations are very high. The way everybody is hailing his appointment, the expectations are very high. So if the president is committed, if the Attorney General is committed, they need to give him adequate resources early enough for him to start.
Professor Justice Bali, do you see the clash that Mr. Vitus Azim sees and some of the concerns he's raising, with especially what to prosecute, who he's going to work with, and the funding and the resources to operate efficiently?
I think there could be clashes, but for me, I think the clashes may not necessarily be a clash between institutions, but it could be clashes of interest. So, for example, the Attorney General's office may not take interest in prosecuting a particular case, or may not take interest in even preventing him from prosecuting a particular case. But there might be interest wielders within the system, for example, who may not be excited about his desire to push a particular case. And when these interest wielders are powerful enough, then the issues, that's where you get a clashes. So, for example, there won't be even overt clashes. Somebody get a telephone call to say, please, drop this case. Yes, please. Drop this one.
Because this is uncomfortable.
Yes, exactly. And oftentimes why this would happen, it's probably because of where the person may be coming from, who the person is related to, who he knows, and all of that. And that is what makes me feel slightly uncomfortable when we are pushing all the pressure to Martin Amidu, because then in the end it is Martin Amidu who has to decide whether or not he wants to do it. But he lives in this society. We know that he has courage of conviction. He's pushed things in the past that many people have said, "Oh, this is things that you can hardly push in Ghana." So yes, as a person, we see him as that big. But there are corruption entrepreneurs. These are people who feed on the laxity of the system, and for those people, it doesn't matter who is involved. It doesn't matter that your level of integrity. They would attempt to deal with you in two ways. One, to reason with you, for you to come along and to say, yes, I don't want to do this. And in cases where they see you are not yielding into those kind of let's talk it nice conversation, they may go to the other extreme. The other extreme is to say, we want to use what we know or have about you to push you to say, I want to let go. Now, those kind of clashes for me are even more dangerous than the clashes between the institutions. And the reason I think that we may not get a lot of institutional clashes is the interest of the president. Now, the president makes this decision, and I think the president wants to achieve something. And so I don't think that he wants to just get the glory that comes with the nomination of the person, but he also wants to get the glory that comes along with this person being able, or this institution being able to stop what people are complaining about. Now, if that is the case and his interest persists, then we will see him, for example, talk to his Attorney General and say, please give this person the free hand to be able to operate. And if, in fact, we need to even revise or amend the law to make sure that he's able to work well, they may go ahead and do that. So you want to see the president maybe giving a lot of support to this office for the office to go ahead and do. But what the case is that if we got people who are power wielders, and sometimes if these are even people who made the president who he is, quote unquote, I don't know anything, I'm just speculating. Then it's going to be difficult for the president to still go ahead if those people were involved in something. So these are the things that may happen in the background. And for those of us who are in corruption research, these are the things we look out for. We don't look out for the hard and fast rules. We don't look out for the structures. We look out for the systems that exist underground which push the agenda of corruption. Now, I want to say something. If you look at across the globe, anti-corruption institutions have had two broad categories. Those that have enforcement powers and would prosecute like the one that we have just established. But except for Hong Kong, where we have huge success stories, many of those others, especially in developing country context, haven't had a lot of successes. Where in other countries, especially in developed countries, the gains have been made are the second category of institutions. Those that are preventive institutions. Those are the institutions that make people have less appetite to engage in the crime. Now, in our system, that is what is the problem. So, for example, this office is going to be concentrating on big cases. But before people get to big cases, to get involved in big corruption cases, they would have been engaged in smaller cases. And those systemic, everyday, you and I, we pay our way through and all of that, are the things that whet our appetite and grow us into becoming experts in this field of corruption. Now, when you have everybody virtually involved, then you are going to say that we are going to be graduating people. Even if Martin Amidu and the office were going to be able to arrest all of the people who are doing it now, and we don't stop the flow, we are going to be getting a lot more people groomed into take place.
So you're saying that setting up the Special Prosecutor's Office doesn't itself stop the corruption from the grassroots?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. We're going to be focusing only on the
corruption will still be going on down there.
Absolutely.
And then the Special Prosecutor will be
harvesting the big cases,
so
and we will grow more big cases to go, because the more people can get away with it down there, the more they develop their resilience to want to go up.
That sounds like a big lapse.
That is what I'm saying, that we haven't started the fight, because you see, I surveyed almost 850 something students in the universities, asking them 10 questions based on a fictitious case, and 58% of these students tell you right up front that we know that this is a corruption issue, but we would be involved. In fact, I use specific scenarios to tighten up the condition that this person will find themselves in. And up to 13% of the people still say they will go ahead, even if they know that this is corruption, this is something that will lead them into jail, and they could get 13% of the people still say they would, of the students, they will do it.
Mindset.
Exactly. That is why I get sad when we limit the discussion around corruption to the office of the Special Prosecutor, because honestly, he won't do a percentage of the issues that are out there.
Dr. Eric Odurosa, that sounds a bit disheartening. He won't do even a percentage of what is out there. But I want to tag on to the speculation he mentioned earlier, that there might be those who might be thinking that, he's one of us. He's not one of us. The fact that Martin Amidu comes from outside the NPP, people have said that it's actually a good thing, because Martin Amidu can rope in current government officials who are indicted or evidence is brought up against them. Do you foresee that going forward, Martin Amidu will be the Martin Amidu we've all known in this new office?
My straight answer will be yes.
Because of what? Because of his demonstrable integrity? Because of his demonstrable integrity
and the fact that people have said a lot of things about him, the fear that has been expressed by other individuals, other political party actors, and even the fact that the president has zeroed on to him. Now look, I'm putting my appointees and my party on the line. I'm committed to fighting corruption. Be the Martin Amidu that you are. In fact, I will be surprised if he doesn't live up to expectation, because I've done some cases with him, and I know that this is a man who means business. When it comes to his resolve to fighting corruption, he doesn't know a brother, he doesn't know a sister. The right thing must be done. I want to agree with Professor Bawale that, look, it's not about the institutions. The institution come in to do corrective measures. What we need to tackle it from the roots. To what extent are we making corruption unattractive to all of us in this country?
Especially the everyday people.
Those
of us who pay
in our schools
to get driving licenses.
Can it be part of the syllabus? Can it be part of the course content or program from primary, JHS, SHS to the university, so that we detest it? If you go to Germany, the Germans feel that the worst form of offense or the worst crime you can commit in this world is stealing the state.
Cheat the system.
Cheat the system. And that, for me, is good. So if we have an office of special prosecutor, I was expecting one other mandate to be given to the office, that they should orient people to prevent corrupt activities. You don't wait for it to occur before you arrest the people and take them to court. Sensitization and orientation to prevent people from engaging or to make corruption very unattractive in this country is very important. But I am very satisfied by one function that they gave to them, to recover and manage the funds. Because we all know that we can take people to court on the basis of alleged corrupt activities, but recovering the amount is always a challenge. After recovering the amount, what happens to the money recovered? If you conduct a survey in Nigeria, that's the problem they have. They can recover, but where does the money go? So if they've given this particular function to the office, it's very important. But then how can we make corruption unattractive in this country? It should start from the base.
Right, we'll be starting from the base. This is still Agenda, and you're watching. We're also streaming live on our Facebook page. You can get interactive with us on Facebook as well. But when we return, we'll be looking into the other discussions that have come with the nomination of Martin Amidu as a special prosecutor. VCRCA CRAB has raised concerns about possible witch hunting. Is this something we should be concerned about? We'll be talking about this when we return from the break.
Are there witches in those political parties? If there are no witches, there can be no witch hunt. So I don't understand this question of people talking about witch hunting, witch hunting, witch hunting. If you are not a witch, then there is no hunting. When he was Attorney General, he was dealing most of the cases for government. When he was Attorney General, he did not shy for telling the President of this country no, when he thought he should say no. So I have very great confidence in Mr. Amidu. This appointment is excellent.
This is an appointment that has the potential to strike fear in the people within and outside the President's own party. So we commend the President and the Attorney General for their nomination, and we believe we can now look forward to robust actions against corruption.
Right, so you heard Jima Boedi there, and a former Supreme Court Judge, Justice VCRCA CRAB, making comments, various comments on the nomination of Martin Amidu. Let me come to Mr. Vitus Azim about the witch hunting thing. I mean, if we look at the extent to which, the witches have taking our country back into corruption and looted the purse, do you get the feeling that they actually need to be hunted very hard?
Yes. If there are really witches, they need to be hunted very hard and get locked up, money is recovered. If we want to actually succeed in this fight against corruption, we need to do that. But the issue, the problem that Martin Amidu would immediately face is, where does he start?
But where should he be starting?
Well, that's a decision that he would take, which is a very sensitive decision to take. I don't know whether he'll be guided by the government of the day, or he will be allowed to use his own discretion to decide where to start, what issues he will consider very important to deal with, and what he thinks that need to be dealt with by other anti-corruption institutions. Like he said that we should not, Professor said that we shouldn't stop by a certain level. All the other institutions will still continue to do their work. So we're not going to say that if you steal, the police should not arrest you and prosecute you. The police will go ahead, the Yoko will go ahead, Shira will go ahead, FIC will go ahead and do their work. The special prosecutor is going to only going to come and supplement or complement what the others have been doing. So the issue now is, one, there are even in this government, there were already allegations of corruption that have been made. If somebody decides to revisit them by bringing them before the special prosecutor, is he going to take it up or not? There are allegations that he's going to be used for political capital. NPP is going to say, oh yeah, you see that we've gone ahead to take somebody who is not within our party to do this. So we are sure that he's going to do the right thing.
But those issues are founded. They have a basis for that.
Yes. So those issues are there. On the other side, on the NDC side, he has his former colleagues and friends. I don't think that anybody wants to say that all the NDC people are Martin Amidu's enemies. He has his colleagues and friends. He has his past revolutionary colleagues, some of whom have behaved in a way that probably he's not happy about. He has made public pronouncements about some of these things. So there are also arguments about how sure are we that he's not going to be influenced by some of these things that he's already condemned in the past. So these are the things that make it very difficult for Martin Amidu to decide where to start and how to start. Should he sit there and wait for complaints to be brought? Must he take them as first come first in? So this is a very basic decision. That
So you think he has a tall order?
He has a very tall order
from the very beginning.
From the very
Professor
beginning,
Justice Bawley,
from both sides.
Professor Justice Bawley, I mean, I still want to stay on this witch hunt tangent. There are those who have argued that Martin Amidu coming in as special prosecutor had his own cases he was pursued. You recall that he pursued the NDC financier Woyome aggressively. So if you wake up Monday morning and he started with the case of Woyome, would you see that as witch hunting?
No. In fact, if it doesn't start from where what we know,
you will be surprised.
Yes, why not? Because there are low-hanging fruits you can pluck to score good points, and that gives you a lot of morale. So if I were him, that's what I was going to do. Those cases that are already. The good thing is that I mean we need to also be careful about the rights of individuals. But the good thing is that Mr. Amidu is not going to be the one to determine whether you are guilty or not guilty. He's going to go to court. So all of the political dust throwing and all of the name calling, I think we should discourage it. And the good people of Ghana should resist those kind of people who would throw in political
so
dust.
So in fact, we should all understand that his work will end up in court.
In court. So he's going to go to court.
It is the court which will determine whether there are merits or not.
Yeah. So if I were him and I had already built up dossiers that I thought they were facts too, why should I wait and start new cases? I will go to court with those ones first, clear those ones first, make sure I have some good morale to continue to pursue them. And you're talking about witch hunting and whether or not we should or should not. I think we should. This week...
Will you hunt the witches?
Yes. This week, the President of the United States of America referred to us in a very derogatory manner, and all of us are angry. Across Africa and the world, everybody is angry. But you just lie down in bed and reflect critically.
He has a point.
And then you ask the question whether this man is actually being, it's being attacked for nothing. Because, hey, honestly, we give him the impudence to insult us.
You mean how else could he describe a country which spends all its state's resources in, enriching the lives of the key leaders and appointees?
Yes. So for me, to make sure that we don't get him come back 10 years from now to do this, all the money that has to go into public service, into providing infrastructure, into educating our children, into providing health care, into providing, the roads that we need and everything that we need, and whoever we can find that money with, we should get you and get that money. Not just get you and send you to Nsawam and ask you to go to Nsawam Training College. We should get the money. If it involves, ransacking your house legally,
we should get the money.
We should get the money.
If it means selling your house to get the money, we should get the money.
We should get the money. But we should have to be. I know that political actors are going to be throwing a lot of dust. Please, let's allow this man to do his work. Let people be careful about frivolosity, because people are going to be talking, and I saw somebody there who was carrying cassava and it is stolen cassava. Amidu, go after him. Sorry. We need to allow this man some space to be able to think through and go after cases that he wants to go after.
But is he capable?
That doesn't mean.
Does he look like he's capable of
doing this? I mean, if anybody were doubting Amidu now, you probably haven't been in Ghana. I think that he's demonstrated enough, and I think that's the reason why the president went in for him. So I think that the political dust throwers should limit their game. I'm happy with one statement the deputy NDC general secretary made.
Kofi Adams.
No, the other one. Koko Anyidoho. Koko Anyidoho made a statement that I was so happy about. He says, why should I follow somebody to court? Because somebody had called that when they support your political cronies, when they get dragged to court, let's support them. He says, why should I follow somebody to court just because he's been accused of stealing state money? Did he spend the money with me or whatever? And all of that. And I think that that's the kind of attitude we should all adopt. That if the next day a brother was dragged to court because he's taking state money, I should not follow him because he's my brother. Because that money could be providing the bed in which I'll go lie down and get treated. That money could be providing the next nurse who will take care of my sick mom in the village and stuff like that. And so we need to understand that political actors will be throwing dust. But we should fight them to make sure that they give this man space. We should be careful about raising everything and asking the man to go chase. Because what that will mean is that he will spend a lot of his time investigating things that are not actually true. So, and those of us who have information, let's help. And that is why it becomes very important that the president should probably call Parliament to order to make sure that the Right to Information Bill is passed.
It's passed,
because
exactly.
that exactly will complement the kind of work that we need for this man to be able to do his job.
Let me shift the discussion of the Right to Information Bill to Dr. Eric Kudrosa. I know that at the heart of all of this is also the issue of transparency. One of the functions of the Special Prosecutor's Office is that it shall, on a quarterly basis, publish the
half-yearly.
Information in at least 2 daily newspapers on national circulation and on the website, the list of corruption cases investigated, prosecuted by the office, the number of convictions secured in respect of cases. That's good, but in the absence of the Right to Information Bill, would this be any effective?
Definitely, it will have some effects on the system. What the Right to Information Bill does is it will give people the opportunity to have access to credible information to support the work of the Office of the Special Prosecutor. But this transparency and openness by way of cases handled by the office is important to send a deterrent signal to people that, look, now we've started work. These are the cases we've prosecuted. If you joke, we'll throw you in there. But my issue here is the cost of fighting corruption. Are we going to quantify the efforts we put in to recover the money?
Must we?
We should, so that it becomes cost effective. Because we've had cases where if you do the calculations, you realize that we are spending more than what we want to retrieve. And that, of course, is not good in public finance. So I think that, yes, the Right to Information Bill is very important. But we should also see that the publication of the cases that the Office of the Special Prosecutor may be handling within a half year is very important.
But what I wanted to find out was the correlation between the work the Special Prosecutor's Office does and the passage of the Right to Information law. If there was a Right of Information law, how will that make the Office of the Special Prosecutor more functional and effective in its work?
It has a positive correlation between the office and its work. The reason is, if you have the Right to Information Bill passed into an act, it will give people the opportunity, and even the office, to have access to certain information. Because the essence of prosecution is to secure conviction. If you are not able to gather the relevant and required facts, you go to court, you will lose out. And that is not what we want. So the Right to Information Bill is critical. It's critical to enhance the work of the office. Not only the office, but for individuals who are supposed to support the office by giving out information. So I think that, yes, the President has done a very good thing. It is up to Parliament to fast-track the process of passing the Right to Information Bill into an act, and the President will have it assented to. And then the Office of the Special Prosecutor can also rely on credible information to do its work. Else, it will undermine the work of the office. It will be like any other anti-corruption institution, like SHRAJ or IOCO, that is fighting to get hardcore evidence. Because I'm a lawyer and I can tell you that if I'm defense counsel on the other side, mine is to raise a reasonable doubt in what you have said. But yours is to prove my client beyond reasonable doubt. And that is a higher standard. And to be able to prove him beyond reasonable doubt, you need the evidence. And if you don't have the evidence, then that's the end of it. So I think that it is about time Parliament passes the act. If you want to fight corruption and fight it to the bottom, RTI is important.
Right. This is still agenda. When we return, we'll be putting the Right to Information Bill before Mr. Vitus Azim so that we'll crack it further, weigh and examine how really important it is and what our governments, the Parliament, should be doing in order to make sure that it is passed. Please stay with us. Welcome back to our agenda. Mr. Vitus Azim, we have a very short time to go though, but the Right to Information, I know it aspires with the Parliament, and it's now the onus lies on the executive to kickstart the process and get the bill passed into law. You don't think we've done enough, obviously?
Well, we haven't done enough, and this government has started something again. But you see, we have only 4 years for every Parliament. And what happened in 2016 was not only embarrassing to the NDC government of the day, but also embarrassing to the NPP parliamentarians. Because it was clear that neither side wants the bill passed. NDC had 8 years, they waited till last minute, and then they brought it before Parliament. I was asking Parliament to pass it. Then NPP, some of them had already indicated their willingness to pass it, all of a sudden found reasons for not passing it. That is a dangerous trend that we're going. When I was at GI, we had made various, both the majority leaders and the minority leaders, several occasions, they would assure you we're going to work on it, and they never work on it. What is the problem? Just look at what happened some time ago. Chirac was investigating a case involving the two people in Baxter House. And they said that they could not get the police to give them a report of the police investigation into that matter. Chirac is a constitution-mandated body. It has power to take those documents, but they gave that as an excuse that they could not get that information. I don't think that Chirac needs a right information bill to have forced the police to give them that report. That I saw as a problem. But if Chirac cannot get that information, how can an ordinary person go and get information from the government institution?
But that's where then we might need the right information.
That's why we need the right information law passed. And that's why they are refusing to pass it. Because they don't want to be compelled to release information that they think should not be released. Of course, they have had several consultations. Parliament has gone around the country to collect information. They had met the Right Information Coalition several times in Koforidua. During Babin's time, they more or less just arrived at a consensus. Then it died. The issue is why? What are you afraid of?
Why? What are you afraid of? Professor Justice Bawley, you're smiling.
If you have the interest of this country at heart, and if you are committed to fighting corruption, and you have 169 or 171, somebody put 171, but I think there are 169 parliamentarians, and you promised us within the first year has passed, it's still at cabinet level, or maybe it hasn't even got cabinet. What is the problem? Can you continue to deceive us? Look at how fast they passed the Special Prosecutors Bill.
And look for, you are going very far. If
so
there are loans that will inure to the
Roper was passed during
Kufuor's
time in a very short time. Loans Parliament is recalled. Look at this investigation that took place, or that's taking place. They recalled Parliament for 1 day. The cost to this country for recalling 275 parliamentarians to look at a case that had already passed. It's not like they're asking for approval to do something. That happened. So
you mean the cash for seats?
Yes, so you could have waited for 2 weeks for Parliament to resume and you do the investigation. But for the Right Information Bill,
they won't recall.
It seems so difficult.
Professor Justice Bawley, let's hear your view about
well, I think that sometimes we need to push harder. And so I have said that, and it's not just, it's not just the politicians or the current crop of politicians. It is all human beings, including those of us on this platform, that if it were our interest and if we're benefiting, we may be reluctant to act. We need to be pushed. And that's why civil society, the media must push to get the president to call those people to order and say, please make sure this is passed. I just wanted to make a point about Dr. Osai's thing about the cost of fighting corruption. For me, I think that sometimes we may spend even more than what we can actually retrieve for a number of reasons. The first one is the deterring effect. So you see how we chased a fly with a bulldozer to catch it. Then you know that if you were an antelope, we will chase you with an aeroplane. Now, what that does is that it gives an indication to people out there that, look, let me be careful, because now there is a lot of emphasis to try and get people to. So I think, for me, we should put in everything that creates that fear in people. And that we must take back to starting with our young people. Educate young people, sensitize young people, let's publicize it, let's talk about it in church, let's talk about it in the mosque. We are talking about it today. When we go home, let's talk about it to our kids and all of that. Let's continue to talk about this. And the more we keep talking about it, and then people can see action taking place, then we are likely to be making some progress.
Right. Justice Bawley.
Just quickly, you cannot quantify the cost of corruption and compare it to what you are getting, because it's not a one-day benefit. What you are doing today against corruption, you can get the benefits 10 years later. So we need to also have that in mind.
Right. Dr. Eric Odrosai, what are your expectations 1 year from today with the nomination of Martin Amidu, subsequently if he is approved by Parliament, and also the Right Information Bill? What do you expect?
1 year from today, a number of things. One, I want to see the Right to Information Bill passed into an act. Two, I want to see the office publish its first or second list of cases they have pursued. Three, I want to see that the special prosecutor briefing the whole of Ghana. In fact, organizing a press conference telling us the challenges he's gone through in the past 1 year and how he intends addressing them. And then finally, I want to see the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan reviewed to incorporate the activities of the Office of the Special Prosecutor.
Professor Justice Bale, your expectations?
Fire.
Fire.
Yes.
You want the Special Prosecutor to work?
Yeah, to fire. And that we should support the Special Prosecutor. I want to call on everyone. Pastors, let's work on, let's talk about it, let's educate people, let's get a mindset. That will make the man's work easier. If your husband was involved, talk to him in the night and pray for him and let him go and face it and all of that. Let all of us be supportive of him. And I know that he has the zeal to deliver. A year from now, I want to hear that we have been able to either get some convictions or got some money back or both.
And what we've used that money for?
What do you,
it's free SHS.
I expect fire, but I wouldn't also be surprised if Martin Amido does not last 1 year on this position.
Why? That's negative.
It is negative, but it could be the reality.
Yeah, but he can resign.
Why?
If there are
That's
impediments in
what
his
I
way.
mean. I don't mean it's being sacked.
And I agree with you. Knowing Martin Amido, if you become an obstacle in his way, he wants to make sure he does the right thing.
But I will be very disappointed. Why? Because even out as an individual, he has had a lot of impediments and he has fought on. Given state power, I think if there are impediments, he should fight on.
He should fight.
There's a lot of goodwill for him. There is a lot of people, civil society, the international community will support him. I know DPs will support that office. Let him stay on and fight on. And I am willing to come along with him to support him. We will go on demonstration to support him to make sure he fights on.
I'm not saying I don't want you to stay on. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, if he goes off.
If it
On
decides
principle.
Yeah.
On principle.
because if people tell
And
that,
I will
look,
respect him for that.
if people tell that, look,
principle.
we have brought you here, you cannot do what you want. I know
He
that-
should tell them
I
that
know
you
that-
didn't bring me here. That's the point. He should
come out
tell
and tell-
them you didn't bring me here.
He
Ghana
should come
brought
out
me
and tell
there.
the whole of Ghana
Yes, Ghana brought me here.
who is putting an
Ghana
impediment
brought
in
me
his
here.
way.
No, that's why
You
the
know?
law says nobody can remove him. Not even the president can remove him.
Yes.
So if Parliament says yay, that is the end. The president can't revoke your appointment, and I think he should stay on and fight.
Right, gentlemen, we've had an interesting discussion. I'm Stephen Enti, and thank you very much for making time to be with us on Agenda. There's more. You can enjoy the rest of our programs, and thanks for staying.